suggests the pre-colonial era is the period prior to the arrival of the colonizing countries. So during this time, several ethnic groups populated the different regions of the country as a result of several migrations. So the first known inhabitants of the Philippines was the Negritos, in the Philippines about 10,000 years ago. The basic features of these people are they are small with dark skin and curly brown hair. So what is interesting to note is that after the arrival of the Negritos and the succeeding ethnic groups that arrived through migration basically formed the pre-colonial tradition, the pre-colonial culture, and of course the building construction practices. So we will now describe the pre-colonial era in terms of the materials. So the pre-colonial era is characterized by the use of light materials available in the environment. So the materials may vary depending on the location or the region, but the most commonly found materials in lowland areas are timber, bamboo, and nipa. So the timber and bamboo are normally used for posts or column, for beam, and for foundation, while the nipa is commonly used for the roof covering. In terms of the construction technology, builders at this time have no professional education. So during this time, people built houses without the help of professionals such as engineers or architects. They only rely on learning building tradition that is refined through the process of trial and error. So the structure after construction is open for later modifications. So next part of the construction technology is the use of the post and beam construction system. So although these people have no professional knowledge, they are able to have come up with the use of this system that is being used until today in modern day construction. So this figure right here basically shows the typical variation of the pre-colonial dwelling in which these wooden posts right here is supporting this beam. Next, the wooden members are connected by mortise and tenon joints since no nails are available at that time. So this is a typical connection used by the pre-colonial dwellings. So since no nails are available, they rely on complex jointing techniques such as this one. So through the use of these available technology and the building practices that is refined to trial and error, the pre-colonial people gave birth to the bahay kubo or the nipa hut. So this bahay kubo or this structure is viewed as the symbol of the pre-colonial era and is considered as the origin of Philippine construction. So the bahay kubo are usually found in lowland areas and is considered to be the predominant residential structure. So we will now use the bahay kubo to describe the form of the pre-colonial dwellings. So the form of the bahay kubo is characterized by three main elements. The first one would be the thatched roof. Next would be the elevated floor. The third one would be the raised pile foundation. First, we define the meaning of thatched roof. So thatch is a generic name for any roof covering made of dead plants, leaves, or fibers. They are put together to provide protection against sun and rain. So this is an example of a layer of thatched fibers initially assembled prior to installation into the roof. So after completing several panels of these thatched fibers, this is what it will look like when installed as a roof covering. So you can see that it is installed. Uh, you can see that the individual panels previously assembled are placed in layers one after another. So despite its combustibility, because it is made of lead plant fibers, this type of roofing system is watertight and may be able to last many years if properly constructed. So the next one is the elevated floor. As discussed earlier, the Philippines is prone to typhoons and flooding. So the elevated living floor uh, protects the people from mud and flood during the rainy season. Moreover, this elevated living floor allows certain ethnic groups that live in the coastal areas to live above water, where the source of food is the water and is near the transportation. So basically, the elevated living floor allows them to be above water and get the source of food from water. And lastly is the raised pile foundation. So, so aside from protecting the people from flooding and exposure to the ground, the raised pile foundation allows the underfloor space, the underfloor space to be used as a pen for stabling domestic animals. And also, it can also be used as a place for storing utensils. So another function of the raised pile foundation is that the people can lit a small fire in this location and to drive away mosquitoes, to fumigate the house. So we now discuss some regional variations of the Bahay Kubo or the Nipahat in the different regions and ethnic groups in the country. So despite the regional variations of the Bahay Kubo, you can see that that these three elements is still observed and is still common to these regional variations. So we start with the Ifugao House, which is an example of the Bahay Kubo created by the ethnic group called the Ifugao. So it is located in the upland area or mountainous area of the Cordillera region. So the main features are a 4-tree trunk column and a thatched roof. So you can see that the raised pile foundation, the elevated living floor, and of course the thatched roof is common in this variation. So since the feature of this house is for the wealthy families, so this is a version of the Ifugao house for the poor families. So this version is for the wealthy family. So another feature of this variation is that the feature of this variation is that it has no windows. Basically, it has no windows to protect the inhabitants in the cold weather in the mountain ranges. So the next one will be the Kalinga Octagonal House, still located in the Cordillera region. So the main feature would be its octagonal shape for wealthy families. So this is a typical floor plan of the octagonal house. So the distinct feature of this version is obviously its octagonal shape, and the roof, or sorry, the floor of this type of dwelling can be removed and can be cleaned through the river. So next variation would be the isling house. So the distinct feature of this house is the inverted traditional isling boat gable roof. So the adoption of the boat-like appearance for the roof is attributed to its tradition of boat building. So among all the variation of the Bahay Kubo in the Cordillera region, it is regarded as the largest type of dwelling. So another variation which is found in the coastal areas are the Tausug house made by the ethnic group called Tausug. So this is what I meant earlier when I said that the house can live above the waters. So the main feature would be, of course, it is located above water with nine or more posts anchored to the seafloor as its foundation. So at the end of the pre-colonial era in 1565, the Spanish colonialism began as the Spaniards successfully conquered the Philippines. So it was also in this era that the Philippines received its name after King Philip II and hence known by the name Philippines. So we now describe the Spanish colonial era in terms of the materials. The Spanish colonial era is characterized by the use of stone masonry and wood. So later on, you will see that this era would make use of the combination of stone and wood. So in terms of construction technology, the Spaniards initially adopted the local nipahat and made larger versions of it. So this is an example of a Spanish version of the nipahat, where the three elements, as discussed earlier, the raised tile foundation, the elevated living floor, and the thatched roof is common and is still present. However, due to the typhoons and fire, that damaged the version of the nipahat or the bahay kubo, the Spaniards eventually made use of stones to build their houses, which made the bahay de bato or the stone house. So this is an example of the bahay na bato. The entire house is made of stones from the walls to the columns. Also, this is a picture from the bahay na bato. So we can see that the columns and the stairs are made of stones. So by the way, this bahay na bato is the iconic structure of the Spanish colonial era, similar to the bahay kubo in the colonial era. However, the earthquakes experienced in the 18th century uh, destroyed these stone houses. So as a result, the Spaniards used a hybrid type of construction, which is an hybrid of the nipahat and the stone house. So you can see that this modified bahay has the ground floor or the walls of the lower floors made of stone, and the upper floor is made of wood. So this is the another technology in this Spanish colonial era called the hybrid type of construction. So the advanced technology available at that time was used to build ports, roads, bridges, lighthouses, waterways, and railways. So this is an example of a train station constructed in Manila during the Spanish colonial era. This is an example also of a suspension bridge constructed in Manila in 1852. Also, the Santa Cruz Bridge in Manila in 1890. So in terms of the form, of a Spanish colonial era structure follows the hybrid type of construction. So this is a picture of a structure of a bahay na bato previously discovered and studied by the archaeologists and historians in the Philippines. So you could see that the ground floor is made of stones, particularly for the columns and the walls. And the second floor is made of wood. So these are uh, wood joists comprising the support for the second floor slab. The Spanish rule weakened towards towards the end of 1898 and was replaced by the American colonialism. So after 4 decades, the Philippines was placed under the Japanese occupation from 1943 to 1946. So in terms of materials, the American-Japanese colonial era is characterized by the use of reinforced concrete, steel, and of course, the concrete hollow blocks. We now describe the American-Japanese colonial era in terms of the construction technology. So the use of reinforced concrete with can reinforcement. So this is an example of a type of reinforcement called as the can reinforcement. So essentially, the main difference of the normal reinforcement is that it is in diamond shape compared to what we are familiar nowadays, which is a circular rebar with a rib. So these diamond-shaped bars with flat plate flanges were used for concrete structural members such as slabs, beams, and columns. So another construction technology developed by the American-Japanese colonial era is the introduction of sewerage system through a sanitary barrio. So the word barrio is a Tagalog term for neighborhood. So essentially, a sanitary barrio is a sanitary neighborhood. So the sanitary barrio is the response of the American government through the rise of epidemic in the country due to the unsanitary conditions of the Nipa house. So basically, the concept of the sanitary barrio is a neighborhood composed of Nipa houses that were established by the government with provision for public bath, public toilet, public laundry areas that can be used free of charge to promote sanitary living. So this is an example of a sanitary barrio. So these are the Nipa houses. The houses are laid out in blocks. So each block is provided with drainage canals that lead to a larger drainage where maintenance can clean and take away the collected sewage. So with the improvement of the sanitary barrio is the introduction of the chalet. The chalet is basically a nipa hut with provision of toilets and wall partitions. So unlike the bahay kubo, so the interior space was defined by wall partitions, and a public toilet. The toilet was provided inside the house instead of a public toilet outside the house. So essentially, this is an improvement of the bahay kubo with the provision for a toilet and bath. Another improvement of the chalet was the ideal sanitary house. The main difference being that the roof coverings initially made of thatch fibers were replaced with a more fire-resistant roofing. So in terms of the form, the American-Japanese colonial era is characterized by the use of reinforced concrete, thereby making the form flexible in the structures that are being built. So the reinforced concrete elements such as beams, columns, and slabs were used. And because of this, identical buildings like provincial capitals are easily made because the use of concrete makes it easier to replicate and construct these types of structures. So this is an example of a reinforced concrete building made use of the GAN system. It is constructed in 1912. By the way, it is one of the first building constructed by the American Japanese colonial era. So the Manila Hotel was constructed for accommodating the foreign investors and high government officials. Another structure constructed in the American colonial era is the Manila City Hall in 1939. Similar to the Manila Hotel, it also used the reinforced concrete can system. So the Manila City Hall is used as the office of the government officials. So we now proceed with the another era, which is the post-World War era. So the post-World War era is characterized by the redevelopment resulted in the massive rebuilding of Manila as brought out by the war. So many structures in this era was devastated. So the post-World War era to the 19th century is dedicated in rebuilding these structures. So the post-World War era is characterized by the continued use of reinforced concrete, structural steel, and of course the introduction of the glass. In terms of construction technology and form, the post-World War era and or the late 19th century is characterized by the start of high-rise buildings construction with a height limit of about 30 meters. So the first building considered to be the skyscraper in the country was built in 1950 with 12 stories. This is the Picasso building as shown in the picture. So we now move to the new millennium era, which started in the late 19th century, to the year 2000. So the new millennium is characterized still by the continued use of the material of choice, which is the reinforced concrete and steel. So in this era, there is a continued construction of higher buildings made of steel and reinforced concrete. Also, there is the introduction of towers above podium buildings. So this is an example of a tower above podium building. So there is this building has a common floor, which is called the podium below. And the start of this building will be on the top of these podium floors. Another construction technology in the new millennium is the introduction of the post-tension reinforced concrete, which made possible the construction of bridges with long spans. I will now proceed with the development of the National Building Code of the Philippines. So, to keep the country's building standards at par with the ongoing technological advancement in building design and construction, the Philippine government enacted Presidential Decree 1096 to establish the National Building Code of the Philippines in 1977. However, the continued rise in technological advancement, both globally and locally, resulted to the revision of this code in 2005. So the Philippine government felt the need to update and revise the Philippine Building Code to cope up with the advancement of international construction. So the National Building Code has a reference codes for different specialization in construction. So here are the reference codes. So for this one, this is the Philippine Electrical Code that provides minimum requirements for electricity and power supply of buildings. This code right here is the National Plumbing Code, which stipulates provisions for plumbing and sanitation. And this code right here is the National Structural Code, or better known as NACP. So this code essentially provides minimum requirements for strength and structural systems. So in building construction, in determining the height of the building,
只可以打勾打圈和打叉，就不要打勾不要打勾，打勾是废票。
Hello. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
So as I was saying,
you can continue. Sorry for that,
Okay.
Mr. Mark.
okay. So in building construction, the National Structural Code is the reference code for determining the height of the buildings, which is entirely dependent on the type of material being used and also the type of the structural system. So one of the achievements of the National Building Code is the regulation and the requirement of building permits. So the building permit, according to this code, no person, firm, or corporation, agency of the government shall erect, alter, repair, move, convert, or demolish any building without securing a building permit. So according to this provision, the building permits covers not only the building construction, but also the repair and the demolition. So the building code also provided a classification of structures depending on the occupancy or use of the structures with the purpose of providing minimum requirements and ensuring safety. So residential dwellings is categorized under Group A. Multiple dwellings such as hotels and apartments are categorized under Group B, while educational institutions are classified as Group C. To continue, institutional structures such as mental hospitals, nurseries, nursing homes is under Group D, while business and mercantile structures such as retail stores, gasoline stations, police stations, and aircraft hangars are categorized under Group E. And lastly, industrial structures such as power plants and factories or ice plants is categorized under Group F. So to highlight certain provisions of the code, we will use the Group A dwellings as an example. So for Group A dwellings, I will be discussing the minimum requirements stipulated by the code. So in terms of sanitation, the code requires that every dwelling shall be provided with at least one sanitary toilet and adequate washing and drainage facilities. So this provision is consistent with the intent of the sanitary barrios, the chalet, and the idea in the American colonial era to promote sanitation. So another important provision is in terms of safety and accessibility, is that the code requires the minimum dimension for stairs. So here it is, 750 millimeters for the width, 200 millimeters for the rise, and 200 millimeters for the run. So it also requires that there shall be at least one entrance and one exit. So in terms of structural stability, the code requires a minimum live load that the floors or the slabs can support. So by the way, live loads are loads that are not constant and changes over time. So an example of live loads is the people walking across the floor or the furnitures that can be moved or replaced from time to time. So they are not present all the time. So they are called the live loads. So as per the code, the live load for the first floor is at least grams, and for the second floor is at least 50 kilograms. So so to imagine the weight that the code required, so 200 kilogram per square meter is like having 4 sacks of rice, each weighing 50 kilograms in a 1 meter in a 1 meter by 1 meter tile. So in this description, you could imagine that the code provide a safe load to be considered in structural design, so that the floor can sufficiently provide support to the loads that the dwellings would take. So another feature in structurality, the code also provide the minimum sizes for footings. In this case, for residential dwellings, the code required that it shall be 250 millimeters thick and 600 millimeters below the surface of the ground. So we now move to our last part, which is the notable structures in the Philippines. Here I will be highlighting these structures for us to appreciate the progress that has been made from the pre-colonial era up to the new millennium. So we'll start with the minor Basilica of San Sebastian, constructed in 1891. So this is located in Manila. The main feature of this structure is that it is the only church in the country made of pure structural steel. So all the doors, all the walls, all the columns and beams inside this church is all made of steel. So the next one would be the University of Santo Tomas main building. So by the way, this is the school where I graduated in college. It is constructed in 1927. The main feature is that it is made of reinforced concrete. And also, it is the first earthquake-resistant building in Asia. So another structure is the Philippine Arena. So it is constructed in 2014. The main feature is that it is made of reinforced concrete and steel. So it is popularly known as the world's biggest indoor arena in the Philippines, and it is a multi-purpose structure with a capacity of 55,000 people. And another one is the Zulik building. So it is constructed in year 2009. So it is a 33-story building that is LEED certified as a green building. So when we say it is a green building, it was able to meet some certain qualifications such as sustainability, energy efficiency, and indoor environment quality. So by the way, the entire building is cladded with glass that makes it use the sunlight efficiently during daytime. So this ends my presentations. So I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
好，今天的讲座 ，Mr. Mark 已经分享完了。他给我们讲解了一些关于菲律宾历史上不同历史时期的这些建筑的特色，以及这些建筑都有不同的名字。然后并且呢，在当时技术有限的情况下呢，菲律宾人民也同时发挥自己的这个建筑智慧，克服重重困难，然后建造出了各种很有意思的建筑。然后通过这些分享，同学们有没有什么想要提问的呢？可以开麦问，或者是在聊天室中打字都可以哦。给大家1-2分钟时间准备一下问题吧。So Mr. Mark, let's give students 1 to 2 minutes for preparing questions.
Okay.
各位同学或者是老师有什么想要提问的吗？可以回顾一下刚刚PPT 里边分享过的一些内容，它比如说像殖民前啊，还有在美日殖民时期，他们就明显在殖民时期的建筑特色就瞬间从茅草屋变成了这种大理石啊，这种比较刚性的建筑材料，所以对于菲律宾来说，可能也是一个比较大的一个突破吧，在建筑史上。所以同学们有没有一些什么想要问的问题，或者是老师？看到参会者名单里边有挺多来自各个学院的老师，在听完这次讲座之后，大家有没有想要问的问题，都可以问哦。同学们可以积极一点。然后，因为菲律宾理工大学在理工科上呢也是比较有怎么讲有自己的特色的，也可以问一些就是关于当地的一些问题，可能跟建筑不太相关的也没有关系，有任何问题都可以来问。Okay, so Mr. Mark, our translator, received a question from students. The student asked, "What's the future trend of construction in the Philippines?" 问题是，我们的翻译收到了一位同学的问题，他是想问未来菲律宾的建筑发展趋势是什么？So, Mr. Mark, could you please answer this question?
Okay. I think the question was the trend in Philippines construction. So my presentation is focused more on the history, but to answer the question, I would like to focus on building construction only. So the building construction nowadays is, for the Philippines at least, is still through the use of the reinforced concrete. But the main difference from the previous one is that the structural systems are more advanced right at the moment. So for these advanced structural systems, we can refer to the natural structural code. So examples of structural systems are what we call as the dual systems. So these dual systems make use of walls and posts and beams to resist the loads in a building. So in terms of materials, I think reinforced concrete is still the material of choice, but buildings nowadays in the Philippines lean to more green building. So like I discussed earlier, the buildings are made more to be sustainable and to comply with certain requirements of environmental requirements and sustainability. So I think that's my answer to the question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mark. Thank you for your answer. 同学们可以在那个聊天室里边看到关于来自于 Mr. Mark 关于菲律宾建筑发展趋势的回答。相信未来呢，我们的菲律宾建筑也会融入更多先进的科技，包括在材料上都会有升级。同学们还有其他的问题吗？或者是老师，同学们或者老师有没有其他的问题想要问 Mr. Mark 马克先生？如果没有其他的问题的话，我们就进入后面的合影环节。So I think there's no question from student or the teachers. So, 陈主任你好，陈主任有什么想要发言或者是想要提问的吗？如果没有的话，我们就进入后面的合影环节咯。 陈主任，你是不是在说话？您在说话吗？
哦，我没有开麦。
嗯。
好的，我总结一下吧，好吗？
好。
Okay, many thanks to Mark. Okay, for your lecture, we may have a general understanding on the development of Philippine construction industry, and we are impressed by your sharing on the architectural features of the Philippines period, the iconic buildings of the Philippines. So our province Guangxi lay great importance on the communication with ASEAN countries on all aspects. In 2016, the China ASEAN Vocational Education Center Research Center was established. On March this year, Guangxi Polytechnic of Construction is appointed as the Philippine Vocational Education Research Institute, which is one of the 10th subcenters. We are looking forward to working together with our peer colleges and universities and aspects from Philippines, especially on academic research, information sharing, skills training, etc. Thank you very much.
谢谢陈主任。
Thank you.
好了。
Thank you very much.
谢谢陈主任。So this speech is from our international, the director of International Exchange Center, Miss Chen. Yeah. Thank you for her speech. So let's move to the group photo session. 那么接下来进入合影环节，请同学们打开自己的摄像头然后跟我们的国际讲师一起线上合影吧。
同学们看一下那个摄像头。
So Mr. Mark, could you please stop your screen sharing? Okay, thank you. Give students 1 minute to turn on their camera. 同学们，请打开自己的摄像头，谢谢配合。有摄像头
维
的快打
兔老师，
开。
对，对呀，维兔老师，你的脸呢？对，好。哎呦，好。
我看到还有很多同学没有打开摄像头哦，可以打开吗？
开摄像头吧，对，开摄像头。
对，接入的同学们麻烦都打开一下摄像头，这样我们合影的时候就会有很多个可爱的小脑袋出现。大家一起配合，给 Miss Mark 留下一个建院学子的良好形象。
好了吗？哎，好。
大家把摄像头打开，不要害羞，习惯就好了，以后这种机会多的是。快把摄像头打开吧，同学们。
好了吗？
来，我用英文数3、2、1啊。3, 2, 1, smile。摆个 pose， 再来一次。摆个 pose， 比个耶啊什么的，小爱心呐。来，再来一次。3, 2, 1, smile。好，谢谢同学们的参加。Thank you, Mr. Mark。谢谢陈主任。
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, students.
我借一下这个平台，说一个事情啊，因为今天在线的同学和老师很多，我们国际交流中心呢已经组织了第3场这个东盟大师或者东盟老师给我们建院的老师和学生搞这个讲座。那么从今天开始，我们会有建院的老师、建院的专家面向东盟的老师和同学们开展这个专业技术的讲座。第一个开始的呢就是我们的土木工程学院，接着是管理工程学院，接着是设计学院，对设计学院的老师。所以呢，欢迎大家关注我们国际交流的工作。谢谢大家，也谢谢 GS 公司，拜拜。
拜拜拜拜 ，See you, Mr. Mark。拜拜，同学们再见，陈主任再见。
刘海122票，金丽丽手1票。